Okay, I'm going to ask that everybody will just undo their requests to speak as of now. Yes, okay, and we will reconvene in 1 minute.
Alrighty, once again, we're going to begin with roll call. Make sure everyone is back. Mr. Hendrick, are you present? Mr. Sorry again. Abenoha, are you present? Mr. Davison? Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Lambadia? Mr. Martinez? Mr. Yu? So Mr. Yu is absent. Mr. Paris? Mr. Bull?
Present. Present.
Mr. Torres? Mr. Zamora? And Mr. Simpson. Mr. Yu, are you all set to go? Alrighty.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
If everybody's ready, I hereby reconvene the assembly. First of all, just for the sake of time, because we do have to get through other bills, I'm going to limit the rest of the discussion on this bill to 5 minutes, at which point I will suggest that we move to previous question and we will vote on the bill. Before we can continue, I want to say a few things myself as a speaker about this bill. I think I've formed my own opinion at this point. So I'll say what I have to say about this bill. I understand some of my assemblymen's concerns about the necessity of a required gun safety course in a standard high school curriculum. While I do understand your concerns, I did like Assemblyman Davison's argument about the exemptions that would be provided for students who were either uncomfortable or had a religious exemption or some kind of mental disability. A few people brought up concerns that they thought it might be more likely to increase school shootings because we'd be giving students access to guns and we'd possibly be fostering their interest in firearms. Though I was talking to one of my fellow assemblymen earlier. Sorry, Cooper, can I have the... Yeah. I just like to refer to everybody by their last names. Cooper, can I have the seat list? Thank you. Oh, Preston. Yeah, I was talking to Assemblyman Labaya earlier, and I understand that there was an analogy made in one of the debates about boxing, which I wanted to touch on. I believe it was Assemblyman Zamora who said that, or was it? No, okay, Assemblyman Torres, who made the analogy to boxing, and that once you become a boxer, it's kind of a skill that you use often. And I had a brief discussion with Assemblyman Labaya, who said he didn't really enjoy that analogy. And I also believe it is an imperfect analogy because I think that encouraging gun safety among students, and not just for the intention of reducing mass shootings, because I don't believe that would be the main effect of this bill. I believe the main effect of this bill would be to reduce accidental discharge incidents and accidental killings of persons who are untrained with firearms. So I stand in support of this bill, even though I believe it has problems. I believe it's a net good to prioritize life over perhaps a course that some students wouldn't necessarily be comfortable taking, but that's just my thoughts on it. I'll go ahead and move on to, Assemblyman Majority Leader Mitchell's thoughts on the comments, and then we will move to Minority Leader Davison. One more thing before we start. It's up to my own discretion who I choose, as I've been informed by the counselors, so I'm going to be picking a few more people other than the minority and majority leads. You can start.
After speaking to some of the other assemblymen, I think we agree to move into previous question, or motion to previous question.
Very well. In order to move to previous question, we need a second and a third.
I second that.
Okay, very well. Is there any other debate before we begin? Okay, let's start with Minority Leader Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I have taken into consideration everybody's problems with this bill, and I would just like to address the majority of the ones I've heard so far. So here are my points I'd like to talk about. There will be no guns in school, operable firearms. This bill does not have anything in it that says it would supersede the gun-free zone in schools. So you would not be putting operable firearms in the hands of children. You would just be teaching them how to handle firearms with mock firearms, so nobody is in direct harm's way. Secondly, it's mandatory. It's mandatory unless a supplementary course is taken. So anybody that has a religious or moral problem to it is entitled to their right to take a supplementary course. This isn't discussed in the bill explicitly, but I think it's important to understand the complexities of writing all of those, and I think the NRS Chapter 390 puts it well. I understand that I made a typo, and that will be fixed. I hope to get this passed because it is a bill of public safety. Thirdly, the course length and the funding will be determined by the state board. There is, in this bill, there are similar requirements, right, to have other things like 11th graders taking the ACT. So similarly to that, the funding for said programs and the time periods and things of that sort will be decided by the school board, or the state board, sorry. Fourthly, it's not up to us who pays for it. Again, the state board legislation doesn't have that authority over the state board, and the funding will be shown by the funding will be decided by the state board. So that's not up to us, and so I don't think that's a concern any of you should have. Point number 5, there will be no advanced honors courses or add-ons to this, so the funding will be less than necessary. I believe it was Mr. Zamora that said advanced honors courses, so you would take like firearm safety honors. That's not going to be a thing, so the funding will be, it won't be as expensive to the state. And number 6, even if pupils intend to harm others, and that's why they join the program, they won't be provided real guns, like I said before, so nobody is in immediate harm's way. Again, if they want to access firearms, they will, right? They'll get them off the streets. They'll get them from their parents' safes. I think it's just really important to introduce firearm safety in a controlled environment so people know how to defend themselves properly, and that obtaining a firearm is something that comes with great responsibility, and it should not be taken lightly. A statistic I'd like to bring up, there were 486 accidental gun deaths in 2015, which compares to the 88 deaths in mass shootings in 2023, according to Google. I know the year isn't over, obviously, but if you do the math, I mean, statistically, there are more accidental gun deaths, which could be way more easily prevented than someone just snapping. Like it was saying, a lot of the points brought up were it only takes one person to harm many with a firearm. However, if we are teaching everyone how to use a firearm to defend themselves, it decreases the likelihood of someone going around and being able to and having access to many defenseless people that they could harm. So for all of these reasons, I hope you reconsider, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, for the sake of time, we're going to have two more comments, and then I will just end the discussion as the speaker there. We have a comment first from Assemblyman Ebenoha. You can speak. Please keep it brief, though.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. However, I am not against the basic principle that this bill is founded upon, which is creating a healthier and better informed society through informing them on how to use guns and guns safely, and ways to prevent mass shootings and everything of that nature. However, I am in opposition to this bill because I feel like there's a better way of reforming this bill in a way. If this bill were to ever be reintroduced as a possibly an integration of gun safety in health classes, I would be more for it, as this is similar to how sex education is taught in schools, right? The reason why sex education is taught in schools is so that we can create a better informed society that can practice their own that can have control over their own body. And in a way, if we integrate gun safety into health classes, we can make it so that the gun safety part of the course can be an opt-in or opt-out situation based on parental discretion, or based on religious beliefs and all of that sort. Yeah, that's all I have to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have one last comment from Assemblyman Torres. Please, once again, keep it brief because we have to disband again at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. So one thing about this bill that I don't like is that it says provisions will be set to support firearm and range safety courses. There are two things wrong with that. Is that I don't think it should be a course, if not more like course criteria, a part of a course, a larger course. And on top of that, it says provisions. It doesn't really mention how those provisions will be received, how the school is gonna make that money. So basically, there's no funding for this gun safety course, let alone a course that's supplementary to that. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, very well. We're going to start our vote now. Okay, I believe voting has concluded. As we do need a majority vote to pass a bill, this bill has failed. We will now be moving on to the next item in our agenda. Okay, we will now be moving on to Bill 19.
This is Assembly Bill 19, Cattle Control and Responsibility Act. Cattle that have died on property not belonging to the owner of the cow must be disposed of within 48 hours of the cow being found dead and the owner being contacted.
Discussion is now open. Speaking time limits will be enforced by the clerk. I will determine on an individual basis according to our schedule what that time limit will be. Okay, I'm not sure if, I just want to clarify, Assemblyman Davison, did you make the request to speak on the last bill, or was your light just left on? Okay, there we go. So we have a request to speak from Assemblyman Paris. You are free to say what you need.
Okay. This bill, uh, before I mean, I stand in opposition of this bill. The reason why is it's kind of vague in how it exactly talks on how the BLM will exactly like extract the cattle. And second, I really want to ask for information why this bill was made. Like, is there any reason why? Like, I don't know if I don't find any reason or use for this.
Yeah, I might have an answer to that question. I actually do know Quinn. He's a rancher. Apparently, cow carcasses are a big problem on farms in Nevada. I don't know specifically why, but that's all I can say about it. We're going to have a comment from Assemblyman Martinez, and then we'll move to Minority Leader Davison.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill for the one fact that I don't know how someone would be able to identify where a cow came from, especially if there are multiple farms in an area. So if there are, I'm just thinking if there are multiple farms in one area that all own cows, I don't know how really, but I don't believe it. I feel like it'd be hard to identify where a cow came from if it just ended up on your property. So,
Yeah, I might have an answer to that question. This is just something I know. All cattle are actually required by the government to be tagged. So they'll have like chips placed into their ears so you can identify what ranch cattle has come from. We have a comment from Minority Leader Davison now. You're free to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Dead animals, especially cattle that are this large, pose a biohazard threat, and disease can be passed on to other animals and other cattle if it is found dead on another property. And I believe it is the responsibility of the owner of the cattle to keep them contained within their property. And this bill keeps them accountable and prevents the spread of disease among cattle. And like it was stated, cattle are chipped or branded to show where they belong to, so identification won't be an issue. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay, we now have a comment from Assemblyman Paris. You're free to speak.
I rise in support of this bill. I just want to say that the fine is too much. That's all. I just want to say it's just too much for one cattle too. Ranchers make actually less on a cow. I think they only make like a few hundred, and charging them a few thousand is too much. But I rise in support of this bill.
We have a request for a comment by Assemblyman Torres. Oh, I'm sorry. First in line was Assemblyman Simpson. You're free to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. As stated by Bull, this is a big problem in Nevada. We do have a cattle crisis going on, and it's a hassle for other farmers to pick up after other farmers and stuff. I do agree that the fine is way too much. I believe it could be lowered, but we can't amend that. So, but yeah, I do rise in support of this bill. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to have two more comments in the interest of time, at which point I will urge a motion to previous question in which we will vote. First, we have a comment from Assemblyman Torres, and then we'll have a comment from Assemblyman and Minority Leader Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a good bill. The only problem I have with it is, well, it's not really a problem. It's more like a question of why 48 hours is the time limit. Like, why is 24 hours like too short of a period of time?
I don't know why. I had no involvement in the writing of this bill, but I can speculate that cow carcasses start the decomposition process within 48 hours, but that's just my guess. We have 3 more requests to speak, but I think I'm just going to limit it to 2 more. That is my hard limit, at which point I will urge a motion to previous question. First, we have a comment from Minority Leader Davison, and then we will move on to Assemblyman Zamora, at which point we will end the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Concerns regarding the cost of removal, the fine for not removing the carcasses are, I believe, reasonable because beef cows, according to Google, cost between $2,500 and $3,000, and a dairy cow costs roughly between $900 to $3,000. And if a cow was to walk onto another person's property that does own cattle and die, it could spread disease to these cattle and cause way more damages than just the removal fee. So I do feel like it is reasonable to have that fine. Thank you.
Okay, then we have a comment from Assemblyman Zamora, at which point I apologize, Assemblyman Paris, but we will have to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to rephrase everyone's position on this matter. I do believe it's a great bill. I do support this bill, but I do have a few complaints it has me conflicted. For one, Section 1 BLM, the Bureau of Land Management is only responsible for administering federal lands, so I don't know if they're the right authority to be the ones to exactly handle this situation and handle whether cattle should be taken away like their carcasses. Additionally, I'd like to agree with Mr. Paris, as I do believe the fine is a bit too much, but I do like that it's within a range from $2,000 to $5,000. And I also looked up cow carcass begins to decompose more or less a mature cow from 6 to 8 months. So I do believe maybe within 48 hours could be expanded on. It doesn't have to be within just that time frame. I feel like that's a bit too strict. Besides that, those are my only complaints. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will say for everybody else's reference, we do not have the opportunity to amend these bills. So if you like it for the most part, then I would just suggest passing it. But once again, that's up to your personal discretion. I am now urging, and once again, I apologize, Assemblyman Paris, but I am urging a motion to previous question. If anybody wants to do that, you can go ahead and turn on your microphone. You don't have to ask for my permission.
I move to previous question.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Do we have a third?
Right there.
A second.
Okay, very well. Is there any more discussion before we start? Once again, I'm gonna limit this. If there is any more discussion, we might allow one more brief comment. Okay, very well. Then we will have a vote. Okay, it appears the voting has concluded. We have expressed 9 votes in support, 2 against, and 1 elected not to vote. Therefore, this bill will be passed. We will move on to the next item of the agenda.
This is Assembly Bill number 20. Enact high school start times will be set to start at later to encourage safety and transportation for young drivers.
That is not the next item on the agenda, actually. That was already failed by the Assembly in a previous session. Yeah, sorry, give me one moment, Preston. I'm finding the next item in the agenda. Okay, the next bill on the agenda will actually be Bill 96. I apologize for the confusion. I'm sorry, is that in the system? One moment, I apologize. I have it on my spreadsheet, but I'm not sure. Okay, the next item in the agenda will be Bill 11. I apologize. Is that also not in the system? Oh, it's a Senate bill. I apologize. Hold on. We're going to take one moment. I apologize. Okay, we're going to be moving on to a Senate bill. This will be Bill 85. Unfortunately, we don't have unless somebody can send me the actual specific committee document so that I can distribute it to all of you, then we can go ahead and move forward with this Senate bill.
This is Senate Bill 85, an act incentivizing innovation in the energy industry.
Okay, yes, we do have the file in here. I apologize. Discussion is now open. I'm going to try to limit discussion on this bill to about 5 minutes because I'm hoping we can make it through roughly 3 to 4 more pieces of legislation before we move on. We have a comment from Assembly Torres. Please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why are we going over a Senate bill?
Excuse me?
Why are we going over a Senate bill?
Because it has been passed through the Senate, so it is in the House now. Yeah, we're just going to go over this in the Assembly. We're going to see what we decide. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris.
Start with my comments. For this bill, the concept is good, but it's section one, the first few words are very confusing, but I get what it means. It's just the point is that like it doesn't specify what type of technology and what type of energy, and it also doesn't specify any fundings. And in section two, it's very vague. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Okay. Comment from Assemblyman Zamora. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I believe this bill is very useful, especially considering now that a lot of energy technology is being placed and advanced. I like that I have only one complaint that Paris did bring up is it lacks specificity. I believe that this is way too broad, especially considering that it is labeled as a utility patent, thus meaning that you would need to specify the type of energy. I know it says it would be a large device that can produce, manage, and transport energy, yet it doesn't specify what kind of energy, as there's multiple. Additionally, I think section 2 I don't find it confusing, and section 3 is also not very confusing. I believe that this bill is very good and solid. I just think section 1 could use some work. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have a comment from Minority Leader Davison. Go ahead. Once again, I'm going to limit this to about 2 or 3 more minutes before I'm just going to urge that we motion to previous question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill because patents that are super long give rights to the company or person that designed it and doesn't allow for others to use it to make a more competitive or better and more efficient thing of energy. And what we need right now as a state, as a nation, is more efficient and cleaner energy. And with a bill like this, it would create a monopoly and it would allow for 10 more years of a company to basically withhold this technology from the public that could create a more efficient or better technology. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, very well. I've actually just been informed that we will adjourn at 1:50 p.m., so I'm going to urge that we move to previous question. If you'd like to make a motion, you don't have to ask for my permission.
I move to previous question.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Do we have a third? Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, I'll have one more very quick comment from Assemblyman Martinez. Oh, never mind. Okay, in that case, we will take a vote. Okay, it looks like the votes have concluded. Because we do not have a majority, this Senate bill will fail in the Assembly. We will now be moving on to the next item of the agenda. This is the last bill we can do today, so I encourage us to finish this in this legislative session because, as I've been informed, we will adjourn at 1:50 p.m. Let's go through. Sorry, one moment. Okay, let's go through Bill 44. It's been passed in the Senate.
This is Senate Bill 44, a bill that schools will use accurate data of air quality to protect students.
Discussion is now open. As a speaker, I'll make a comment. I was in the committee which passed this, and I helped with some of the revisions. I do think this would be a beneficial bill to positively impact the health and safety of students in the wider Nevada school districts. Okay, we'll have 2 comments. We'll have one from one from Assemblyman Martinez. We'll have one from Assemblyman Zamora. And in the interest of time, I will once again suggest that we move to previous question.
I rise in support of this bill. I believe that overall it is very helpful for protecting the safety of students and athletes, because as it says, the appropriate AQI for canceling such events would be 151 and above. And at 151, typically schools do get canceled, but some will still hold sporting events, even though the air quality is not optimal or healthy. So.
Okay, thank you, Assemblyman Martinez. We'll move on to Assemblyman Zamora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Similar to Mr. Speaker, I was also on the committee that passed this bill. I believe this bill is very useful and helpful towards all the students who engage in athletics and in school. The reason being is that now more than ever, a lot of Nevadans have seen an increase in bad air quality due to rising temperatures and natural disasters. An example of this would be fires from California, thus leading a lot of air dust and molecule dust to go over to Nevada, which has the potential to increase the rate at which students can get diseases such as lung cancer. So I rise in support of this bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will have no more discussion. I urge that we move to previous question.
I move to previous question.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have a third?
I third.
Is there any further discussion? I'm sorry, Assemblyman Davison, but I don't think we have time for further discussion. We'll go ahead and just take a vote on this bill. Okay, it appears voting has concluded. Since we do have a majority, this Senate bill has now passed through the Assembly. Due to time constraints, I will have to adjourn the meeting at this time. We will reconvene at 3 p.m. Thank you.
All right, guys. So if you could just fill into the seats, and I'm going to for this presentation here, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Jim Stewart. He's going to speak briefly, and then he'll introduce our guest of honor that we have today, so we can get this session rolling and get some information and wisdom from these gentlemen. So, yeah. Jim, you can go ahead and take it over.
I guess this is working. Gentlemen, I hope you've had a fulfilled week, learning things, getting along with each other, learning about how government works and how politics and everything. I hope this experience will not only carry you forward, but to inspire you to encourage other delegates to actually be part of the Boys State program. So I charge you to actually go back to your high schools and start talking about the Boys State program and try and encourage them to participate next year and the following year. Let's get this ball rolling, and then that way we can actually grow our program. So that being said, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce you to a very special man. I've known Doc for a few years now, and he's always there for our community, our veterans, as well as our youth. And I know that you guys are anxious to meet him. So at this point in time, I would like everybody to please rise, give our Medal of Honor recipient his due respect. And I want to introduce to you Colonel Donald Ballard, retired Army. So please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Take your seats. Can you hear me in the back? Yes. Too bad. It's a pleasure for me to be here and look at the youth of our country, because we want to invest in the leadership of the new world, the new company, the new country. You're our new leadership. We have to depend on you to run this country. It looks like we got a pretty good crop of kids wanting to do that, so I'm impressed. I started my military career. I was a pre-med major in dentistry, and I joined the Navy originally because I wanted to be a Navy dentist. And that was before the Vietnam War started. The Vietnam War started, and they decided that they needed paramedics. And that's what you would call them today as paramedics, but we were called corpsmen when we were with the Marines. So when I joined, again, I thought I was going to be a dentist. The needs of the service are greater than the needs of the individual, so they voluntold me that I was going to go to the Marine Corps. So, and that was funny because I joined the Navy to avoid the Army draft. And then I got turned around and I got drafted in the Marine Corps. So that part was not funny. But, you got to what they call adapt and overcome. And I did the best I could to survive in an environment that I didn't care much for. But as I lived with the Marines, I fell in love with them. And I think I spent my entire career wanting to be a caregiver. I worked orthopedic and neurosurgery the majority of the time that I was in the service. So I worked the ER and the operating room, the OR, my entire career. Enjoy it. I'm going to turn this over to question and answers too. I want a Q&A at the end, so be thinking of a question that you might have. I don't know if you've ever met a living Medal of Honor recipient. I know you haven't met a dead one, but hopefully you'll have a chance to ask the questions that you have a desire to learn the answers to. I'm here for you today. And historically, the Medal of Honor was founded with President Lincoln in the 1861 during the Civil War. Prior to that, we had no medals of our own. We were still issuing out British awards for our military because we hadn't thought of enough in advance to start making our own. So it wasn't until the Civil War came about after the Revolutionary, and you guys all historians, I'm sure, but after the Revolutionary War, we started thinking independently and started thinking of a country instead of a territory of England. So during the Civil War, up to date, there's been 3,505 medals like I'm wearing issued. 3,505. The majority of them are issued to their families because they earned it. They were killed earning the award. There's very few of us that actually lived to talk about it. When I was in Vietnam in 1967, 1968, and when I first received the medal, there was over 400 living Medal of Honor recipients. They were mostly Second World War guys. And now we're coming in as Vietnam guys. Today, there's only 65 living recipients, and I'm one of them. So it's a small group of individuals that carry that legacy and carry that torch to be there for our fellow veterans. It's an honor to wear the award. I've often said, though, it's harder to wear it than it is to earn it. You know, one day in my life, they said I was heroic, and I proved myself to be above the call of duty, and they put me in for the award. Now, ever since then, for 50 years, I've had to live up to it. So it's not necessarily easy. I don't know who I would have become had I not received the award. My time is concentrated more on taking care of veterans and providing guidance in that arena. I did spend 30 years in the military. I was happy for that. I learned a lot. Is any of you in here, by a show of hands, going to join the military? Outstanding. All right. Thank you. Our country needs leaders. Our country needs military representation. It's another form of caring for this country and proving that, you know, I was raised with the idea that you don't live here for free. You have to pay a price for freedom. There's no better place to pay it than in the military. I risked my life for you. When we went to combat, I didn't hate the enemy, didn't even know him. But I loved the people here in the United States enough that I would go fight to protect our liberties, protect our freedom, and do what was necessary to protect America. That was my feelings. I'd ask you to look at yourself and see what you can do in your generation to make this America a better place for the rest of us. I'm really here, like I said, to answer questions, you know. So I'm going to turn it over to question and answers. But, you know, because you're a different breed for me to talk to. I usually talk to veterans. I usually talk to schools. And we talk about how I earned the award. If you have an interest in how I won the award or earned it, I was a corpsman. Again, I was a paramedic in the Marine Corps. I risked my life to save the lives of the Marines. And it was I was just doing my job. I never considered myself a hero. I considered myself a servant. somebody that did his job the best he could, and as a paramedic under fire. I got wounded 8 times, but you know, I'm not Johnny from the post office or from the gas station, but when we came back, we were treated very poorly. I don't want that ever to happen again. The soldiers, the warriors, were not the problem. None of us liked war. None of us raised our hand to go kill anybody. That wasn't our mission. Our goal was to protect America, do what we were told to do for the reasons that they wanted us to do them. So each of us have our own motivation, and life's about choices. We make them every day. Is there anybody that has a question that I'll get with you? Anybody that has a question that I can talk to, because that inspires me to expand on what I think your interests are. I could stand up here for 2 hours being an old colonel and bore the hell out of you, but I'm here to be here as a servant for you. So yes, sir. The question was there any life experiences that I learned while I was in the military that kind of shaped my life, right, in essence? The first thing you learn when you go in the military is you're nobody important. It's not about individuals, it's about teamwork. You're not important sitting in this chamber. You can't do it by yourself, right? You have to design an effort to where you convince other people to do what you want or agree with your ideas and share those ideas. So it's all about team building and team concept. My entire life, especially in the beginning of the military, was learning that I was not the important one. And for me to survive or grow or benefit from my experiences, I would have to learn how to play the game by somebody else's rules. We do not control anything in our life. If you thought you have freedom, you're wrong. The freedom that we have is given to us by the veterans. That's a good question. So in essence, I would summarize that answer by saying, I don't know what I would have been or could have been if I hadn't joined the military, because I am today a product of my environment, and I want to impart on you students, or whatever you call, you are students, right? I'm imparting my wisdom on you, thinking that somehow or another it will get your attention and for you to consider doing the right thing for the right reason. Whatever that is, life's about choices. What are you going to do for the next generation is the question that I would have followed up. I learned a lot. I was exposed to a lot. I learned from that. But my takeaway is, what did I do for human? What did I do for mankind? And how did I help Americans? Next question. Please speak up. You need to use your microphone.
Yeah, my name is Ethan from Anderson, and my question was, could you tell us about one of the injuries you sustained during combat? Thank you.
The question is about what kind of injuries and how many, maybe. I was wounded 8 times, and most of the time it was either gunshot wounds or shrapnel wounds, where an exploding device would go off, and shrapnel, little pieces of shrapnel would come out and hit us. So I am blessed because A lot of people get hit with one piece of shrapnel or one bullet and they die. I spent a lot of time in the hospital recovering, but I'm here walking around today happy, because I had $1 million wounds, I was able to survive my wounds. I have post-traumatic stress. You know what PTSD is? Well, we didn't. When we came back from Vietnam, we didn't know there was anything called post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. We were just messed up. We didn't fit in. We didn't adapt well. We didn't play well on the playground with others, So we had a difficult time trying to fit back in because nobody understood us. I gotta walk you down that road just a second before I answer your question. Vietnam, the end of Vietnam, again, the civilians in this country were so turned off and so mad at the Vietnam War that they struck out at anything that resembled the war. So when the soldiers, sailors, Marines came home, they attacked us. I had cups of urine thrown on me. I had dog feces thrown on me. We were not allowed to wear our uniform off base because it would incite trouble. How proud is that? I mean, come on. I mean, I loved America, and then I come home and get treated like that? Why? What did I do wrong? I just went and did what I was told to do and tried to save my life and tried to save the lives of the other Marines. What did I do wrong to get treated like that? So, some of my injury is mental, emotional, the unseen wounds, you know what I'm saying? So I suffer from post-traumatic. Now, I do not suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The difference between a disorder and post-traumatic stress is whether that consumes you. If the disorder is so bad that you are not able to function, then it's a problem. And we have veterans walking around today that have a disorder. Now, they may have had a disorder before they went in the military. Who knows, But I can tell you right now, if you walk out of this building and see a child get run over, that's a post-traumatic experience. Can you identify with that? Because it was after the fact, post-traumatic, right? And it was traumatizing to see something that you don't normally see, and it was terrible to witness. So that's a PTS, post-traumatic stress. In combat, we saw it every day. We had to, not only did we have to deal with the terrible weather, we had to hump all of our stuff wherever we went. We were up in the mountains, and we didn't have vehicles. We walked everywhere we went. We carried everything we owned, and it was very challenging. So some of my wounds, again, are not necessarily scars. You can't see them, but don't screw with me. Yes, sir, Mr. Ballard.
So my name is Aaron Ballard. As a living testimony to the Vietnam War, what was the combat zone like? What was the experience?
Well, that's a good question. If you talk to 10 Vietnam veterans, you would have 10 different answers to that question. It's like 10 blind people feeling an elephant. You got one with the trunk, one with the tail, one with the ears. They all experienced something, but it was different than the next guy. We had different parts of the country over there that was mountainous. We had the Delta, which was the rice paddies, and different warfare in each category, and each part of the country geographically had a different war. So I can only speak from what I know. We lived in the mountains, and the North Vietnamese, we primarily had the regular army, the Vietnamese army. They wore uniforms and they fought just like we did. They had nothing to live for, so they fought until they died. Now, how terrible is that? Is that you're willing to give your life for something, and it wasn't their company, their country. It was communism. They didn't care about their country. They didn't care about their home. There was no, it's not like our home. We have love, understanding, and we have the will to help our fellow man. None of that existed in Vietnam. They were told and trained, and a lot of them were high on drugs. So each person, if you go forward and you ask other Vietnam veterans what they experienced, it's going to be different than mine, just so you know. They were all right. It's no different than you having, your own experience today. And if 10 of you had the same experience, you might see it differently. But we had tremendous, challenges related to the geographics, mountainous range, some desert area, jungle. It was just a different environment for each one of us. Did I answer your question? Yes, sir.
Sir, my name is James Vogel, and my question would be, what is one lesson that you would hope my generation or our generation would never forget about the Vietnam War era?
Good question, because we struggle with that all the time. When we came home, we were treated so badly that we didn't want the new kids, the new service people, to experience any of the same challenges that we faced. So our whole effort was try to turn the American people around to love the veteran again, to love the military. We were so anti-military. I mean, who else would throw dog crap on you or urine, I want you to just think about who we're sending off to combat. Why? Why do we have to commit ourselves to combat? Is there not another way of solving problems? Do we have to kill each other to solve a problem? I find fault with the leadership of our country. Starts in a chamber like this, but the leadership on all levels failed us. So my takeaway from your question would be education. Talk to the veterans. Learn what real war is about. You know what I mean? What's it about? Why are we over there suffering, and for what purpose? I think today that we should not have been there. I didn't have a choice then. I was ordered to go. Say, you do what you're told to do, because that's what's required. So that's my takeaway. Let's get educated more, and let's find ways of solving our differences and our problems without killing our people. Yes.
Hello. My name is Graydon Proby from Anderson City. How long were you deployed in Vietnam? My grandfather was deployed in there for a good long while. I don't remember the exact number, but it was an incredibly long time from what I remember.
Well, it was longer for most of us than others, but the Navy and the Army had a 12-month tour. I think the Air Force did too, I'm not real sure, but I think they had a 12-month tour. The Marines had a 13-month, I'd be the lucky guy to get in with the old guys, we had 13 months we had to do in order for us to rotate back to stateside. I did not make it the whole 13 months. I made it 10 months and 14 days, and then I was wounded and had to be medevac back to Japan. And I spent the rest of my time in Japan being treated. So the average time was either 12 or 13 months. And then you could re-enlist if you wanted to, or stay there if you wanted to, depending on your jobs. Not every job in the military is killing people. You know, we got cooks, we got supply people, we got pilots, we got truck drivers. We got any job in the civilian life that you would have out here. We have it. You might have to change uniforms. Hello, I went from the Navy, Marine Corps, and the Army because I saw an opportunity that I wanted to grow into. So that was my, my choices. I'll always say life's about choices. So I'll leave that with you. Any other questions? Well, yeah. Okay, yes.
What experiences in the military made you realize that the military was right for you?
Repeat that.
What experiences in the military made you realize that the military was right for you?
Very good. I grew up with a family of returning Second World War men, right? And I was taught at a young age that you had to pay a price to live in this country. You couldn't live here for free. So it was easy for me to try to identify with other adults. And to specifically answer your question, I learned more from that military family, and that's what we are. We're a military family. And we support each other. Now, we argue between ourselves, Army against Navy, you know, like the football games and everything. But when it comes down to it, don't screw with any one of us because we'll all kick your butt. So I think the takeaway on that question is family. Family-oriented, family love. I risked my life because I loved the guys that I was serving with. It had nothing to do with the North or the South. They were having a civil war just like we did in our country. The North wanted the money and the taxation. The South had all the production of wheat and rice and had all the money and income. So they wanted to tax, the North wanted to tax and control all the crops. That's when they asked the United States to get involved. But I don't think I could hang my hat on anything better than the love that we have amongst our family. I never knew love until I was there and experienced it. There's no greater love than combat buddies. You know, when somebody's risking their life for you, that's pretty tough not to love, not to appreciate. So, one last question. Okay, wait a minute. How about two more questions? Two more. Okay, let's start with Jim first.
So historically, if I'm correct, I know that there was a ceremony when Vietnam soldiers were awarded their medals. They threw them onto the lawns of the White House as a sign of disrespect. So I was just wondering your thoughts and opinions on like the anti-war movement during that time period, and also if that's like applicable to conflicts today.
You're asking me my opinion, right? I mean, I'm not speaking for anybody but myself when I answer these questions.
Yeah, of course. I mean.
Okay, just to be clear, I'm not representing anybody but Don Ballard. I hate him. I mean, as I said, I didn't agree with the war either, but why are you attacking the warriors? You know, you can protest all you want, burn your bras, do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Just don't, why are you affecting me? You know, why did I go for you? Why did I go to serve and risk my life so you could have the right to have a speech, that you could have a right to have an opinion? Why? Who in the hell are you? You're an American, and that's who we fought for. You have a right to have that opinion. Whether you disagree with them or not, you know, there's anus orifices, right? You know what that, you know what anus, there's an asshole in every group. And, and some of them are thinking they're doing the right reason. They're talked into being a protester. I don't think any of them, I've had many of them over the years come back to me and say, I apologize, for being anus orifice, for being against you. I learned after I got to know some of you that it wasn't your fault, you see? It's people not thinking, not educated enough to understand the situation. Yes, sir.
Was there a like a specific incident or where you performed that led to the receiving of the medal, or was it just like a compilation of your service? And if you might remember any details of that incident specifically, if there was?
Sure. Now I have to relive it in order to tell it, right? I try to avoid talking about, oh, look at me, I'm the hero, look at me. It ain't about me, it's about team effort, like I said. One day in my life in combat, we were attacked several different times, and we successfully beat the enemy. In other words, we killed them. They weren't stopping. They were going to kill us or be killed themselves. So we obliged. When you're sitting there getting shot at, you're going to do the best thing you can to stay alive. But they overrun us several times. I could tell you several different instances where I got shot point blank. So I watched somebody shoot me. That kind of messed with my mind a little bit. So I didn't hold a grudge. I got up and killed the son of a gun. Only thing I had on me was my knife. So I knocked him to the ground. He was walking away from me. He thought I was dead. I walked up behind him, and he was going through my food, and I jumped on him, knocked him to the ground, and I slit his throat. Not something you want to talk about, but I killed him. It was, he had already tried to kill me, so I thought that was what the game was all about, die or undie, or stay alive. So we had different situations where we were close encounter, and they had the grenades. They would throw the grenades in on us, or they would throw mortars, weapons. They would use explosive devices, and they did their best to kill us. That was their job. They wanted to kill us. So that one particular day was difficult for me, but they, I'm stumbling here because I have to relive it. Sorry. It's not something I try to remember all the time. But I came in, I was treating somebody, again, paramedic. My job was to go out and get somebody that got wounded. They would holler corpsman, they'd holler doc, they'd holler for me to come up out of my safe little place, because when you hear the crack of a weapon going off, everybody hit the ground. And the only guy that got up was the corpsman, because somebody got shot. And now he's bleeding to death, and he wants me up there to help him. I understand that, but God darn, I'm the one going to be the next target. I'm walking up there to get shot at. I was cognizant of that. I'm one of the few guys. I was older. I was 21 years old. The average age of Vietnam was 19. I had a wife and 2 kids. College, almost 3 years of college. So I appreciate education. I appreciate the ability to think through things before a reaction. But I didn't always prove that. At that particular day, they overrun us, and they threw hand grenades in our areas. I just went out and got a patient who had been wounded. I was carrying him back in a fireman carry, and I laid him down in what I considered a safe spot, and I laid him right on top of a grenade. It went off and blew both of his legs off. he took all the blast. It knocked me down, but I was not injured. Maybe mentally and physically, emotionally, but I was not physically injured. So I'm treating him. And I'm doing what I can to save his life, tying tourniquets about blood volume expanders, treating him for shock. And another grenade comes in and hits me in the helmet. And it lands right by my legs. I always joke about Marines. I said, not being a Marine, I didn't stick it in my pocket for a souvenir. I realized I had to get rid of it fairly quickly. So spontaneously, I grabbed the grenade and I threw it out, and false bravery, because nobody picks up a grenade. But I knew it was going to kill me, you know? So I got rid of it. And a few minutes later, another grenade came in behind me. I could not see where it landed. One of my patients that I had assembled there waiting for the helicopter to come in to evacuate him hollered out and said, "Doc, there's a grenade." I turned around. Yep, there was a grenade right there just outside my reach. So I had to lunge for it, and I was off balance, and I pulled it up under my chest. My thought was, I'm going to save the lives of these other guys. I really didn't think I was going to get out of the country alive. I'd been wounded 6 times at that point, and I just really didn't think I was going to make it. So for me to risk my life for love, for my fellow man, was what I did, because I didn't want them to die. So I threw myself on the grenade, thinking that if somebody was going to die, maybe I could save them. Now, I did not, I've had 50 years to think about this, right? I did not intentionally commit suicide. Not knowingly. I didn't pre-think what I was going to do was going to be wrong. I didn't think it through very well, So does that make me a hero? No, it makes me pretty stupid sometimes, But the idea that I would risk my life and willing to give up my life for the rest of you in the group, they appreciated what I was willing to do. I got the award for saving lives instead of killing the enemy. The majority of the people who wear this medal get it for saving the unit because they went and killed a bunch of enemy, you see. I didn't go there to kill anybody. Matter of fact, the first Vietnamese I shot, I did CPR on him trying to bring him back. That was just my training. That was my willingness to try to do what I could. Naturally, the phone's going to go off. So that's my story. I risked my life jumping on a hand grenade to save the lives of the other 6 guys that I had standing there with, laying there. Most of them were out of the war. They were already wounded. They were waiting for their medevac helicopter to come in. They couldn't move. It was up to me to take care of them. And I did what I thought I had to do to save their lives.
I want to thank Colonel Ballard to share his experiences with you. Thank you for the questions that you asked. They were very thoughtful questions, and I know the Colonel actually appreciated your comments. We are going to try and get some pictures, if Nick is okay with this, to first get pictures with the staff, and then I'd like to get it with the delegates. So.
That's what I was working on.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Can you jump up there, please? Doc, can I get on your red shirts up there, please?
Go up on top?
Yep.
Okay, if the Legionnaires would come up.
We'll get the red shirts up, and then you guys can just line up right here. And then maybe some back here on this top shelf. Yeah.
This may not be the best space, David.
you on. You're good. And then you with the glasses, you beat my left, so you gotta slide over. You wanna come up front? Two guys wanna come kneel down up front? Come on down up front. You wanna come up front? The guy in the back, behind the guy in the stripe is high, I can't see you. Come on up here. You can come sit and kneel next to these guys. The guy in between the two flags, there you go. Good. Can you see him? Smile.
Why? You just get so bad.
Thank you. You guys all line up. What I'll do is I'll have Doc. He'll come out this way and he'll walk out. You guys can shake his hand. So line up right here. Against with your back on that side. He'll walk across this way. Go ahead and line up.
Joseph. Joseph.
You mentioned in our interview that we haven't talked much, and I want to say that's kind of my bad.
That's not your fault. I mean, I'm just in different cities and I do a lot, so I just kind of bounce around. Yeah. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
It's a chair. Oh, by the way, I took the chair. I know. I kind of want this chair. And just
with our lovely staff.
This chair, I need this chair.
I'm sad he wasn't here. I'll get in. If he's still a speaker next year, I'll get in contact with him to come down. It's easy to get in contact with these. It's so much easier than you think to get in contact with these people. It's crazy.
Interesting. I'm gonna go say hi to Val.
Yeah. I'll follow you.
If you ask about the gift shop, you can't go. That's the rule. If you ask about the gift shop, you can't go.
And just project your voice.
Test, test.
Okay, in the interest of time, we need to reconvene this assembly as soon as possible, so we're back in session. As the Speaker of the House, I'm going to enforce roughly a 5-minute time limit on every single piece of legislation that we go through. There's going to be a 30-second speaking time limit. You can be selected multiple times, but that's up to my discretion because we just need to pump out legislation as fast as possible. So, please, we're not going to have any recesses, anything like that. Just get through it as fast as possible. We will take votes. I'm just going to go right down my list. Okay, let's start with Bill 45. This is the first thing on my list. We'll move to Bill 55. We'll move to Bill 80. Yeah, okay, we'll move on. First of all, let's start with Bill 45. I don't believe we have the clerk here right now. Give us 1 second. Discussion is now open. Okay, we have a comment from Assemblyman Paris, so please say whatever you need to within 30 seconds. Thank you.
I think this bill is a good one. I rise to support of this bill because it recognizes the many tribes that actually deserved, that were promised the rights of water, and not only water, but also leadership in our seats of chairman in Nevada. So I think this is perfect. This is a very good bill, and I think it satisfies with many of the things that the tribes were promised but were not.
Thank you, Assemblyman Paris. We'll move on to Assemblyman Davison. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Looking through this bill, it has a lot of really concrete things that are recognized. In addition, there is also federal cooperation where it says 20 federally recognized tribes. So these are established tribes, and there won't be any loopholes according to this because it's up to the federal government. And I think this is a really well-written bill that should be passed without wasting any further time. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Davison. We'll be moving on to Assemblyman Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Nationally, according to the NPR.org, the Indian Health Service has found Native people are 9 times more likely to lack safe water. So by passing this bill, it will guarantee that these families and tribes have safe and accessible water.
Okay, thank you. I will allow one final comment. Actually, Assemblyman Torres buzzed in first, but I will give Assemblyman Mitchell the preference because he is the majority leader. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
I was just going to motion into previous question.
Okay, just to be clear, you don't have to have my permission to make a motion. Just don't interrupt somebody while they're speaking. You can make a motion in between speeches. Thank you.
I second the motion.
I third.
Okay, is there any last discussion before the vote? I'll allow one more comment if we still have one. Okay, Assemblyman Torres, you can make your comment in 30 seconds or less.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a question. When it says all water, it means like, it says rights to usage of all water within the state of Nevada. It means that they can use it concurrently with us, right? That's my only question.
I'm not sure about the specifics of this bill. The language is up to your interpretation. Based on my reading of the bill, I would say that, yes, it's stating that rights to usage of water in Nevada shall be granted to the state's 20 recognized federal tribes. Thank you. Okay, we're ready to vote now, correct? Yes, let's move on to the vote. Assemblyman Simpson, is there an issue? Okay, never mind. Okay, we have 11 in favor and 1 did not elect to vote. Therefore, this bill will be passed. We'll be moving on to Bill 55, which is the next on the agenda. Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I like the concept, and it's actually very good for the homelessness problem we had in not only in Nevada, but mostly in Las Vegas. Only thing is that it doesn't really say the funding it will be supported by. That's all.
Okay, thank you. We have another comment from Assemblyman Zamora. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I believe the bill addresses all things necessary. And I just believe it's a bill that could be very helpful towards addressing the homelessness issue that has been rising in Nevada as of recent, especially in the region of Las Vegas, as that's where a lot of homelessness has impacted the state. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have another comment from Assemblyman Simpson. Please speak your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the bill. This isn't really helping homeless people whatsoever. In fact, it's supporting homelessness. I mean, giving them free stuff. That's coming out of our tax money. That's all I gotta say.
Yes, Assemblyman Davison, this will be our last comment for the case, and then I will urge that we move to the previous question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. In Section 5, it says all healthcare facilities shall be reimbursed for the provision of emergency healthcare services. As we know, a lot of our privatized health institutions charge an extreme amount of money, which would take away from a lot of, the provisions would need to be great, and I don't think there are enough, I don't think there's enough funding for this without extra taxpayer money. Thank you.
Okay, that is your time. Thank you. I will now urge that we move the previous question.
I motion to previous question.
Do we have a second? Do we have a third? Is there any last comments before we begin voting? Okay, very well. We will begin the vote for Bill 55 now. Okay, it appears all the votes have been casted. 2 in favor, 7 against, and 3 have abstained from voting. Therefore, this legislation will not be passed by the Assembly. Okay, we will now be moving on to Bill 70. Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of the bill. This bill is promoting gambling to literally underminers, and I don't think that's really practicable. We already have gambling issues especially in Las Vegas, and I don't think it's good to really make it worse with this bill. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, we have another comment from Assemblyman Hendrick. You can take your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition against this bill. I understand that gambling is a large profit of Nevada since casinos are allowed, but encouraging gambling to 18-year-olds is just, it's not a good idea. Adults, if they want to come, make that their choice, but to promote it to 18-year-olds so that they can become hooked on it for the rest of their life, I just think it's a horrible decision. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have our next speaker, Assemblyman Martinez. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. So, in 2021, the fiscal year casinos in the state of Nevada generated $8.45 billion in gaming revenue. So I believe that it is not needed to lower the age for gambling due to it being, or due to the human brain not being fully developed until the age of 25. So I believe that 18-year-olds cannot make the responsible choice on whether or not how to spend their money.
Okay, we'll allow one more comment from Assemblyman Torres, and then I will urge that we move to previous question.
Speaker, may I
Yes.
motion to previous question?
Yes. Do we have a second? Do we have a third?
Third.
Okay. There will be a vote on this bill in that case, unless there is any further discussion. I believe there are two comments still open. Assemblyman Davis, okay. He has not withdrawn his comment. As Davison is the minority leader, I will give him a priority here. You can speak your case. I would prefer if it's 20 seconds or less.
Gambling is one of the largest reasons, and casino revenue is a huge reason where we get our public funding without having to burden taxpayers with any money, as well as the fact that it's really inconsistent that someone can go into the military and die for our country, but they can't gamble with their own money, and I don't think it's very fair in that sense. So I rest my case.
Okay, thank you. Voting will now open. Okay, it appears we have a split vote. Unfortunately, we do need a majority to pass the bill. Therefore, I believe this bill will be rejected. It appears we have a changed vote. We now have a majority. We have 7 in favor of this bill. Therefore, it will be passed. Okay. There's an issue on the screen. It says the bill's failed. As far as I understand, we only need a simple majority to pass the bill. One moment. Okay, the clerk has told me that it's just an issue with the screen. This bill has passed. Okay, we'll be moving on to bill number 4.
This is Assembly Bill 4, Early Childhood Education and Development Act.
Discussion is now open. Oh, I'm sorry. I believe we've already gone through this bill, actually. I don't think it was marked on this docket, so we will be moving on to another bill. I apologize for the mistake. We'll be moving to Bill 34. Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Minority Leader Davison. Please state your case in 30 seconds or less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. It says that there are, the point of this bill is to give teachers more time with their families. However, in Section 2, it says mandated built-in lessons on a time that won't interfere with personal daily prep. That means they would have to spend more time, actually, and I think it's just inconsistent. And the point of the bill is, I mean, the purpose is good. It sounds good on paper, but just the things that are within the sections directly oppose the purpose. Thank you.
Okay, we have a comment from Assemblyman Zamora. Please state your case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to agree with Mr. Davison on his assessment of Section 2, I believe. And additionally, I have an issue with Section 3 due to the fact that I feel like it could be easily abused by the teacher to gain reimbursements effectively and efficiently. I also think that Section 1 is already taken place. I forgot what it's called, staff development days. It is known as staff development days. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have another comment. Okay, well, we just got one from the Majority Leader, Assemblyman Mitchell, so you will be afforded the opportunity to talk. Please take your time.
So ultimately, I do raise an opposition to this bill, also based in the sense that teachers in CCSD, they are also known to abuse the district credit cards that they are given, in the sense that they buy many personal items, such as vehicles, even to some extent, which have been brought to the school board's attention. So I do agree with the abuse, and yeah, ultimately, that's just the main problem with the bill.
Okay, we'll have a final comment from Assemblyman Torres, and then I urge that we move to previous question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill because, so PLC is time with your fellow teachers to plan out and schedule lessons. So I think that I feel like teachers already have so much time constraint in the job because they constantly have kids asking oh, what do I do here? What do I do here? So having a time dedicated just purely to collaborating with others, I think is a good idea. And I think that teachers aren't paid enough to not.
That is your time. I apologize for cutting you off, Assemblyman Torres, but we do have to get moving. Would anybody like to make the motion to previous question?
I motion to previous question.
Do we have a second?
Motion.
Do we have a third? Okay, very well. Is there any final comments before we commence the vote? Okay, very well. We will now begin the vote on Bill 34. Okay, it appears all the votes are in. Because of what happened last time with the changed vote at the end, I'm just going to afford 10 more seconds if anybody wants to change their mind. Okay, it appears the votes are in. We have 2 in favor, 9 against, and 1 vote abstained. Therefore, this bill will be failed.
Test.
Okay, we will now be moving on to Bill 69.
This is Assembly Bill 69, an act to maximize profitability and participation in Nevada's most successful financial sector, gaming.
Discussion is now open. Give us 1 second. These bills are pretty similar. We just want to take a look at these. 1 moment. I'm going to request the assistance of a counselor quickly. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we haven't really come to a consensus about the situation here, so I'm just going to urge to postpone this bill for now until we figure out what's going on, and then we will move on to the next bill. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I motion to postpone indefinitely.
Do we have a second? Do we have a third?
I second.
I third.
Okay, very well. We'll take a vote. Are there any other comments before we take a vote to postpone? Okay, very well. All in favor, just please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Okay, very well. This bill will be postponed. Okay, we will now be moving on to Bill 89.
Assembly Bill 89, an act to help forward our transition to clean energy while also helping to decrease our gas emissions.
Discussion is now open. As the Speaker of the House, I'd like to make a personal comment about this bill. One thing I'm noticing is that Section 2 mentions a 5% tax of lithium that Nevada receives is prioritized to the making of electric buses and charging stations for all school districts, though I doubt the state of Nevada has a legal authority to seize lithium from a private company, but that is just my opinion. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill because this reduces gas emissions, but as well provides the initiative that we need, which it comes with the energy efficiency, and sooner or later our gas will run out. So this is a good idea and a good initiative.
Thank you. We have a comment from. Okay, well we first had a comment from Assemblyman Torres, but since Minority Leader Davison has requested to speak, we will give him priority, and then we will move on to Torres, Zamora, and Hendrick. Please go ahead.
There we go. A 5% tax of lithium that Nevada receives is prioritized to making of electric buses. Electric buses are a relatively new technology, and I don't think we should start relying, I don't think we should start relying on electric buses, especially for the entire school district. We have a very large school district with enough transportation issues already with gas buses. We don't have enough, and I don't think it would be wise to have a new technology transporting all of, especially Clark County School District students, because it's unreliable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's your time. We have a comment from Assemblyman Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I think when it says 5% tax of lithium, I think it means like lithium sales, not like they don't take lithium. So when they sell lithium, that money will go into paying for these electric buses. And also, they already have started transitioning. For example, my school, they brought them, but I don't know what happened to them. But yeah.
Okay, as the Majority Leader has requested to speak, again, I will give Majority Leader and Assemblyman Mitchell the opportunity to speak for 30 seconds.
I rise in opposition of this bill, also based on the sense, as David said, it is relatively a new technology, and right now I feel like we should be focusing more on getting bus drivers for CCSD, which we are already short of, rather than transitioning to an entirely new transportation system or essence of transportation system. And also, when it comes to the $200 million, it doesn't specify that it's going to them. It's just saying it's going to entrust them, not requiring them to use that money on transportation. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Assemblyman Mitchell. We will move on to Assemblyman Zamora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. The reason being that I would like to quickly address the comments made by Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Davison. Although many think the technology isn't reliable, there's an example in Reno, as I hope many of you have seen. Reno has electric transit buses which are very reliable and have been transporting people here for a while now. So I believe that that technology can be transitioned into the buses for school. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to have two more comments. We're going to have one from Assemblyman Hendrick, one from okay, well, since we just had one buzz-in, we'll have three more. Please make them extremely brief. One from Hendrick, one from Simpson, and then one from Davison. Please speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of this bill. In Section 1, it states that only Washoe County and Clark County will be transitioning. But then in Section 2, it states that the 5% tax lithium will be helped to build buses, charging stations of all districts. So it's kind of inconsistent there. And then also, I do agree that it is newer technology, and I think we should take more time to transition over than to see if it will be better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll have our last two comments, and then I might make a brief comment myself. Go ahead, Assemblyman Simpson.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. It's kind of hypocritical as mining lithium does put out CO2 emissions, so I don't really understand why there's a worry if you're just going to make more CO2 emission. Not only that, with tax, with the $200 million, which would be entrusted to the transportation, that's going to be a lot of tax dollars coming out of our pocket. And I think we should really work on getting bus drivers instead of this.
Okay, then we have a final comment from Minority Leader Davison. Please make it brief.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. I believe for the reasons that Section 2 is very unclear. A 5% tax of lithium, it's not very clear if it's coming from sale or mining or anything like that. And secondly, in Section 4, it says $200 million. That's a lot of money, and it doesn't say where exactly it's from. And thirdly, Washoe and Clark County should not be the only things. I believe that this is a job for county legislation if it does want to be just those two counties in particular. Thank you.
Okay, I will elect not to make a comment because I believe the minority leader and majority leader expressed my concerns about this bill properly. I will urge that we make the motion to previous question.
I motion to previous question.
I second that.
Okay, very well. Are there any other last discussions before we move into voting? Okay, very well. We will move into voting of Bill 89. We have 10 seconds left if you want to change your vote. Okay, very well. We have 1 in favor, 10 against, and 1 abstained from voting. We will not be passing Bill 89. We will now be moving on to our next piece of legislation. Give me 1 second to just make sure we haven't covered this. Okay, actually, I've been told that we should probably prioritize Senate legislation right now, so we will be moving on to Bill number 10.
This is Senate Bill 10, an act concerning further advanced STEM programs in high schools, being a standard and obligation of high school educations.
Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Assemblyman Zamora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe this bill is very good, but there's one huge flaw I see. It's in Section 2. It says the Nevada Department of Education shall be endowed with $30 million a year. I do not know where that funding can be coming from. That is such a astronomically high number, and that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, as our minority leader has buzzed in, he will get priority to speak, and then we'll be moving on to Assemblyman Paris and then Assemblyman Martinez. Assemblyman Davidson, please state your case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill for the sole reason that it says private businesses should allocate money for this program, and that's just, there's no way of enforcing that. And secondly, with our Nevada's education ranking being so low, I don't think they would prioritize our state over any other state with better STEM programs, and the funding just wouldn't be there. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of this bill. Yes, I made this by myself, but this was heavily amended, and I do not remember writing much of this. So, and the things that they amended, I clearly do not stand with, and I stand against. So I rise in opposition to this bill.
I think that the legislative body appreciates that additional piece of context. Assemblyman Paris, we have another comment from Assemblyman Martinez. Please state your case.
Correct me if I'm wrong on how to say this, but I cede my time to Sean.
Okay. Sean will be allotted 30 seconds.
Thank you, Assemblyman. As a private citizen, I would like to state that Nevada is the 46th most funded state as far as education, and is nationally low, so on other things of education. And this $3 million per year should not be going to start new programs, but should be put to funding our current education, which is already so low compared to other states. It's a ridiculous amount of money that would be putting to something we don't need. Thank you.
Okay, I now urge that we move to previous question.
I call the previous question.
I second the motion.
Third.
Okay, very well. Are there any last discussions before we begin voting? Okay, very well. We will now be voting on Bill 10. I'm not going to allot the 10 seconds because it seems that the opposition is quite unanimous, so this bill will be failed. Okay, we will now be moving on to our next Senate bill, Bill 60.
Senate Bill 60, an act to prevent biological males from competing in all-female sports teams and leagues, to protect all-female sports competitiveness, fairness, and safety.
Okay, before we begin this discussion, I have a feeling that this is going to be quite controversial, but once again, I will limit the time in the interest of passing more legislation. I might allot a few more minutes if we have more comments we want to make. Okay, well, Assemblyman Abenoha buzzed in first, but I think Matthew had a comment where he raised his hand. We did this one yesterday, okay. Oh, thank you for clarifying that. Do you know if it was passed or? It was passed? Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Assemblyman Matthew. I did not have that in my docket. Okay, we'll be moving on to the. I believe we voted on this already. Bill 85, the Electric Incentivization Act. Unless we did not get to cover this before we went to recess. Does anybody have that information? Did we?
I motion to vote this bill.
Okay, very well. Do we have a second?
I second.
Do we have a third?
I third.
Just to be clear, this is Bill 85. Do we have any other discussion before we vote on this bill? If you'd like to make a comment, please buzz in. Excuse me? Are we? Okay, I was under the impression that we moved on to Bill 85 because I believe we passed Bill 60 earlier. The question I was referencing was Bill 85. I remember covering this before the assembly disbanded, but I wasn't sure how we voted. Does anybody have that information? We did not vote on this? Okay, very well. Then I'll open discussion for Bill 85. Okay, seeing that we don't have seeing that we don't have Senate Bill 85 in our system, I suppose we'll move on to our assembly bills once again. Okay, I believe some of these bills have been passed very recently, so this is a live document, so they're not currently in the system. So I'll just try to check up on some of the previous assembly bills that we haven't covered yet. Okay, let's move on to Bill 53.
This is Assembly Bill 53, an act to expand Nevada high school student access to college and career ready preparation resources.
Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not necessarily opposed of this. It's a good idea, but all I'm gonna say is that we already kind of have a program for this, and I don't know if you guys know, it's the GEAR program. We already have this, like something like this place, and making another one that does already similar tasks is kind of a waste of resources. But I like the concept is pretty good.
Okay, we have a comment from Minority Leader Davison. I will be giving him priority since he is a Minority Leader, and then we will move on to Assemblyman Yu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill as well, especially because there are other programs similar to this, and like another assemblyman said, Assemblyman Paris said it would be a waste of resources. And secondly, I know I go to a CCR school, I go to Veterans Tribute, and there is a $100 program fee, and I think this program would kind of undermine any existing programs that do collect profit to make their programs better. Thank you.
Okay, we have a comment from Assemblyman Yu. Just for clarification, I'm going to end this off at 3 more comments. So we will go to Assemblyman Yu, Assemblyman Martinez, and then Assemblyman Zamora, and that's where I will urge for us to move previous question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I believe that students require, I think that early preparations for college is beneficial for students, and I think it's better for an educational cause. So I think that this bill is a good idea.
Okay, we have a comment from Assemblyman Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. As stated earlier, there is already the existing GEAR program, but also 2 things. There are counselors in most schools who are more than willing to help students with college readiness and preparation, and nowhere does it say where the funding will come from. If it'll be I don't believe it says anywhere if it'll be a private organization or one being run through schools. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll have one final comment from Assemblyman Zamora.
I motion to previous question.
Just to be clear one more time, you do not need to buzz in to have a motion.
I second.
Do we have a third?
I third.
Okay, we will begin voting on Bill 77. Oh, I'm sorry, that is not the right bill. Bill 53. Okay, it appears we have all votes. We have 3 in favor, 9 against. Therefore, this legislation, Bill 53, will not be passed. Please give me one moment. Okay, we'll be moving on to Senate Bill 11. If we have that in our system, I'm not sure if it's been updated yet. Yes, we do.
This is Senate Bill 11, an act concerning additional acres of parks and the recycling of abandoned, unused land for natural purposes.
Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris.
I have made this bill. Reason as to why I have made this bill is because, and this is concerned to only Las Vegas. If you have lived in Las Vegas, there's a lot of land that's being unused or it's abandoned and all that. And as a means to help the environment and reduce the carbon emissions, I think it's better to make parks and to replace those lands or make more parks near neighborhoods. Thank you.
Okay, we will now have a comment from Minority Leader Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. A lot of this land that is said to be unclaimed or unused, it doesn't, a lot of the land is owned by the federal government. Most of Nevada is actually, and turning them into parks, 3.5 acre, it just limits city growth. And with Las Vegas being such a growing city, I don't think this is the right move for our economy, or I don't think it's even very feasible. Thank you.
We will now have a comment from Assemblyman Hendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I understand that Las Vegas especially is a growing city, but we already have so much that is taken up and places are being trashed by people moving in, and there's so much scrap going on that I believe that if we use some of that land to build parks so that, you know, kids have places to play, we have more beautiful places to look at, it'll help increase growth because it'll be more appealing to people. Thank you.
Okay, I'll have 3 more comments. Please make them brief. We have one more comment from Majority Leader Mitchell. Then we'll be moving on to Assemblyman Paris and then Assemblyman Yu.
I do oppose this bill, mainly in the sense that since we are in somewhat of a water crisis when it comes to Lake Mead, it being used by many other surrounding states, I find that creating more parks in order to, which will then take up more water from Lake Mead, I feel like that's not necessarily resourceful. And plus, we are already having major developments along with such as the Las Vegas Aviator Stadium and maybe even the Las Vegas A's or the A's baseball team, so I don't think we need to add this onto our plate. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more comment from Assemblyman Paris.
A part of this bill was to make it desert landscape. For some reason, it was amended to be removed. I made for the parks to be desert landscape to be drought friendly, and for some reason it was removed. And to the concerns of the growing city, the reason why I said unused is because that unused land will be used for parks. It's being unused. It won't limit the growth. In fact, it will probably get more people inside. And that's my case.
Okay, and we have one final comment from Assemblyman Yu, and then I will urge us to move to previous question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Not only do parks are appealing to people, it also is beneficial to the environment, as building parks include trees. Trees will be able to filter out air in areas with high CO2 emissions.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I will now urge us to move to previous question.
Move to previous question.
I second that.
A third.
Okay, is there any more discussion before we vote? Very well, we will now commence a vote on Bill 11. Okay, I will give the opportunity of 10 seconds if any of us want to change our votes. Okay, the 10 seconds is over. We have 7 in favor, 3 against, and 2 abstaining. Therefore, this piece of legislation will be passed. Okay, we will now be moving to a piece of legislation that we had. No.
Mr. Speaker, I have an announcement. Minutes ago, the governor signed AB 6, presented by Mr. Evan Spielman, a bill to increase the safety measures on the obtaining of firearms in the state of Nevada. This is the first bill signed into law by the 2023 Nevada Boys State session. Congratulations.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate the news. Once again, we are on a time crunch, so we'll be moving through this quite fast again. We've been told by the counselors to consider Bill 69 and 70 as separate bills. I will remind you that we have passed Bill 70, the only difference between Bill 69 and 70 being that in Bill 70 there is a $30,000 fee issued to the casino per illegal customer under the age of 21, but in Bill 69 there is a $10,000. I'm sorry, the difference between the bills is Bill 70 has a $30,000 fine and Bill 69 has a $10,000 fine. So I just urge to move to previous question.
I move to previous question.
I second that.
Do we have a third?
Actually, I have a point of information. Sorry, I was just wondering, what are we voting on right now?
We are on Bill 69.
Okay, Bill
If
69.
you recall earlier, we did vote on Bill 70, and we did move to Bill 69 at a previous point, which we did postpone. We were told, okay, well, Bill 69 and Bill 70 are almost functionally identical, but we were told by the counselors to consider them as different bills because we don't know the situation with them. So I'm just urging to take it out of postponement and move for the vote.
Okay, I third.
So do we have a third for that motion? Okay, very well. Is there any other discussion before we move to vote on this bill? Okay, very well. We will now commence the voting for Bill 69. Okay, I will afford everybody 10 seconds the opportunity if you'd like to change your vote. Okay, that is our time. The vote has ended with 4 in favor and 8 against.
I move to reconsider the vote.
I believe to, let me check. I believe to reconsider we need a 2/3 majority, but let me confirm that. Assemblyman Davison, what was your position on the previous vote? You voted nay. Okay, very well. Can you explain your reason for the revote?
We've just passed a similar legislation, and I think we should leave it up to the Senate for this.
Okay, if that is all, and you've submitted the motion to reconsider, then we will need 3 to make the motion. Do we have a second? Okay, very well. The motion is killed. We will not reconsider this bill. Okay, we will now be moving on to Senate Bill 77.
Senate Bill 77, an act, revisions, provisions relating to water within Nevada.
Discussion is now open. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris.
The concept of this bill is good, and I think we should regulate how much water should be used outside the federal guidelines. But I think 500,000 gallons is super little, like very super little. We use in an average about a few billion. 500,000 is too little.
We have a comment from Minority Leader Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. In Section 3, it says lakes within the state designated by the state engineer to ensure that local wildlife do not suffer from a deficiency. So if that 5 million gallons isn't enough, it will be stopped, and it'll make sure, if it's not enough, it'll make sure that that's stopped and that the wildlife will continue to prosper without also stripping too much water away. And I think that alleviates some of the concerns Mr. Paris had. Thank you.
We have a comment from Assemblyman Zamora.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just to put this bill into context, the 500,000 gallons of water being sent to outside, I apologize, to outside states is actually an increase annually. Nevada sends out exactly 300,000 gallons of water each year. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a comment from Majority Leader Mitchell.
I also rise in support of this bill, mainly in the sense that, as stated in the bill, other surrounding states can create their own ways in order to fund water, specifically California, because they take the majority of water from Lake Mead, in which we give proportionally. They can create salinary plants to extract salt from the ocean, thereby using it as drinking water, which they can use. So I'm in support of this bill.
Okay, excellent. We will take one more comment from Assemblyman Paris, and then I will make a quick comment.
I rise in support of this bill. I think I misinterpreted that 500,000 gallons. So I agree with this, though. The other states take too much water. Although we do recycle about 96% of our water, it's still not enough, and we're still in a drought, even if we recycle 120%. So that's my case.
Okay, and just for a quick comment, as an individual who's sympathetic to Nevada's water drought situation, and due to my agreement with Majority Leader and Minority Leader, I also agree to pass this bill.
I move to previous.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Do we have a third?
I third the motion.
Is there any further debate about the bill?
Apologies for the interruption.
Did we have a comment? Oh, okay. Okay, in that case, we will begin voting on Bill 77. Excellent. We have unanimous agreement for this bill. It will be passed in assembly. Okay, the next bill we will be looking at is Senate Bill 36, if that has been added to our system at this point. Excellent.
Senate Bill number 36, an act that strengthens the requirements and responsibilities of serving on the Board of Trustees for any school district within the state of Nevada, for trustees to better serve the students and the teachers of Nevada.
Discussion of Bill 36 is now open. We have a comment from Majority Leader Mitchell.
I support this bill mainly in the essence that the CCSD, for example, the CCSD School Board of Trustees doesn't necessarily have the exact qualifications. For example, one of the trustees, Danielle Ford, is one of the members of the board, and she doesn't even have a high school. Well, she was a member of the board, and she never even received a high school diploma. Therefore, in order to advocate for schools, I would see that you have to aspire to have an education, and I think that just makes utter sense.
Quick note to the assembly, we have about 7 more minutes before we have to disband this meeting, so I'm only going to allow 2 more comments before vote, at which point we will be moving on to one final piece of Senate legislation, and we will conclude the meeting. Okay, we have priority from Minority Leader Davison, so you can make your comment, and then we'll be moving on to Assemblyman Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill for the sole reason that it says to maintain, you have to observe an entire school day's worth of instruction. I think for the very small school districts around the state, this would be compromising because especially with so little staff, anybody on the board being at the school for even just one day a year, it would take away from a lot of the other kind of more important things, I believe. And we just need to trust our teachers to run the school properly. Thank you.
Before we have Assemblyman Paris speak, I've just been informed that the adjournment has been moved to 4:15 p.m., so I will give a little bit of time. We have a comment from Assemblyman Paris. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Assemblyman Paris, but Majority Leader Mitchell does have priority over you.
All right, so when it's talking about the one day out of an entire year, it's not necessarily an essence of criticizing teachers. It's more about that the trustees can have a sense of what they're advocating for. If they're on the school board and they represent different sections of a school district, they have to understand what they're representing. Therefore, it's one day just to better your job, and I think that that's something that everyone should advocate for, to put yourself in someone else's shoes in that kind of sense. So I yield my time.
Excellent. We did have a buzz-in from Minority Leader Davison. However, Assemblyman Paris has been interrupted twice, so I'm going to give him the opportunity to speak briefly before moving on to Assemblyman Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I think it is an obligation for teachers to actually get this, the requirements and all that. In my high school, my admin administrator doesn't even have a GED, and she got it very late, and she's not even that good. So I think this is a very good bill, and it's rightful for all the other people who've been trying for positions but never got it because of this.
Thank you, Assemblyman Paris. We'll have another comment from, unless he's withdrawn. Okay, it appears we have no further comments unless
Motion the
any.
previous question.
I second.
I third.
Okay, is there any other discussion before we vote on this bill? Okay, very well. We will commence the voting of this bill. I will give people 10 seconds the opportunity to amend their votes if they wish. Very well. It appears that the final vote has come in. We have 8 in favor, 1 against, and 3 abstaining from voting. Therefore, this bill will be passed. Okay, the last Senate bill that I see on our agenda is Senate Bill 51, which I am actually the author of, so if you would like a request for information, please feel free to.
Senate Bill 51, an act increasing the severity of legal repercussions for first and second time DUI offenses in the state of Nevada, and widening the role of judicial discretion on a case-by-case basis.
Discussion is now open. Before we go any further, as the Speaker of the House, I would like to make a brief comment on this bill since I am the author. The reason I wrote this bill is because I think that increasing first and second time DUI offenses would disincentivize people from recommitting the offense. We have a comment from Assemblyman Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Just reinforcing what you said, I feel as though by increasing it, it acts as a deterrent to make sure that people are not drinking and driving. I yield the rest of my time.
I wholly agree. Thank you, Assemblyman Martinez. We now have a comment from Assemblyman Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. There's a lot of, and if you have lived in Las Vegas, there's a lot of car accidents and all that, and DUIs should be held more responsibly to the people. Only thing is that lots of prisons, a lot of people who have been convicted is because of DUI and stuff like minor stuff, but I do support this bill.
Okay, thank you. We have a comment from Assemblyman Hendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Drinking and driving, or driving under the influence, is a big problem, especially in Vegas. So I think increasing the punishment to discourage others from not only making the mistake the first time, but again and again, I think it's a great bill that we should enforce. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. We will now have a comment from Minority Leader Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill as well, simply for the reason that there were 330 fatalities involving alcohol, which is a third of all fatalities, which is just way too much, especially for something that can be easily prevented with laws that are, in my opinion, very lax regarding this, even though it's such a dangerous thing to do. And that'll be all. Thank you.
Motion to previous question.
Second.
I third.
Do we have any more discussion before the bill goes to vote? Okay, very well. We will now vote on Bill 51. I will give everybody the opportunity of 10 seconds to amend their votes if they wish to change them. Excellent. Then this bill will pass with unanimous decision. All right, we will now be moving on to Senate Bill 43 and 3. I am aware that they are on the docket, but I need to confirm that they're in the system. Let me take one look. 43 and 3.
Senate Bill 43, an act that ensures that every patient receiving care from a hospital is fairly charged and is not misconstrued to pay expenses that are unnecessary.
Okay, we are now open for discussion. Immediately, we have a comment from Assemblyman Zamora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I believe it's very morally correct. As of now, at least in Nevada, a lot of hospitals do not provide their patient with receipts showcasing what expenses they're being charged with, thus leading to expenses being charged unknowingly as to why. Additionally, I believe Section 2 is a very needed section, as during birth, hand-to-hand contact with their child ends up being charged. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a comment from Majority Leader Mitchell. You can go ahead and take that opportunity to speak.
So being the author of this bill, I think that I should just clarify a few things. So what it means by itemized bill in Section 1, pretty much it's a breakdown of every single charge that has occurred. That way hospitals can remain reliable when it comes to their pricing, and personally, people can advocate for market price values. And when it comes to skin-to-skin contact, a charge of relatively $38 to $100 is charged for mothers who hold their babies after birth. in emergency C-section, or just in C-sections in general. Thank you.
Okay, we will have a comment from Minority Leader Davison. I will then ask a question to Majority Leader Mitchell, and we will have another comment from Assemblyman Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill simply because charging market value for all of the drugs and things like that will de-incentivize hospitals from providing optimum care. Like we can see this happen in Canada and places like that where people are sent away from hospitals for anything non-emergency because it's not for profit, and this will cut down on the profits of hospitals and therefore undermining the optimum level of care that they can provide. Thank you.
Okay, I will allow Majority Leader Mitchell to speak, and then I will ask my question.
So I do understand at first it might seem like a universal or a portion of a universal healthcare system when it comes to giving out drugs, but what I mean by that is I mean prescription drugs. These are drugs that people are already paying for, so it's not necessarily saying that if a person is diabetic, they walk into the hospital and they get insulin. No, if they're having an emergency, then they get insulin at the market price value instead of it being charged relatively 500 to 700% above market price value, which is what hospitals already charge for. Instead, it's more of like a fair price if you're already paying a high expense for it. Thank you. I yield my time.
I'm sorry, I completely blanked on my question. I'll have Assembly Paris make his comment. Thank you.
I rise in support of this bill. I actually went over this with my committee, and the reason, well, one of my reasons I am supporting this bill is that I find it pretty like abrupt that you have to be charged just to see your child or touch a child, and that's not fair. And the point that people are getting medication, which they don't, well, sometimes they don't even know they're getting, but they need it, and they're charged so much, and I don't think that's really proper for hospitals.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to ask for one moment. Okay, we have a comment from Assemblyman Zamora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to address what Mr. Davison brought up and expand upon what Mr. Mitchell said. Regarding Section 3, either way, if hospitals were to charge market value for drugs, they would still gain a profit at the end of the day, as a lot of people do go to the hospitals for, obviously, to get their needs addressed in terms of medical. So by just charging it above market value, you're just hurting your customers and your patients. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a comment from, by the way, just so the Assembly knows, we are going to join this meeting at 4:10 p.m. because we have to be out of the building by 4:15 p.m. So we'll have two more comments from Assemblyman Davison and Assemblyman Zamora. Or I'm sorry, Assemblyman Simpson, and then we will commence voting on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. Again, cutting these the charges for everything, especially because things are ridiculously overcharged, understandably, so the bill can, so the hospitals can create a large profit margin so they can put research into developing new systems of helping people and cancer research and things of that sort. And the second you take away that profit, a lot of the research goes away, so our medicine will not modernize.
Okay, that is your time. We have a final comment from Assemblyman Simpson. I apologize, Assemblyman Zamora, but we have to get on with voting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. One reason the hospital bills are pretty unfair is because there's people who don't pay their bill, like, for instance, homeless people, so it will add the charge onto other people's bills, and it will make it more expensive. Another thing is there was a shortage of doctors, so that won't help whatsoever. And that's it.
I apologize, Majority Leader Mitchell, but we do not have time to make another comment. I would suggest that we move to previous question.
I motion previous question.
I second the motion.
Do you have a third?
I third that motion.
Okay, I'm just going to assume there's no further discussion. We will commence voting on this bill. Okay, I will give everybody the opportunity, 10 seconds, to amend their votes if they want to change their mind. Okay, very well. The final vote is 8 in favor, 2 against, and 2 abstaining from the vote. Therefore, this bill will be passed. Okay, due to time constraints, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you.